Emily Dawson never expected her life to change on an ordinary Monday morning. Fresh out of college, she had just stepped into her first full-time job in downtown Cleveland, a modest position at a mid-sized firm where everything still felt unfamiliar. The office buzzed with quiet ambition, and Emily often found herself second-guessing even the smallest decisions. She was capable, but knew enough to feel invisible. That's when she first noticed Michael. He wasn't the kind of man who demanded attention. No loud jokes, no flashy confidence. Instead, he carried himself with a calm steadiness that made people naturally gravitate toward him. As an administrator, he seemed to know how everything worked, and more importantly, how to make others feel like they weren't alone in figuring it out. Their first interaction was simple. Emily had been struggling with a system error, frustration building behind her polite smile. Michael appeared beside her desk, quietly offering help without making her feel incompetent. He explained things patiently, step by step, never once rushing her. That small moment became the beginning of something neither of them named. Soon, their interactions grew into casual conversations during coffee breaks. Then came shared lunches. Then long walks after work, where the city lights reflected in puddles and conversations stretched effortlessly from work to dreams, from music to memories. Michael was different from anyone Emily had known. He wasn't loud, but when he spoke, it mattered. He had a dry, understated sense of humor that revealed itself slowly. He listened more than he talked, but when he did talk, it felt honest, grounded. Within months, their connection deepened into something undeniable. They moved in together after less than a year, not out of impulse, but because it felt natural. Their apartment wasn't luxurious, but it was warm. Lived in, real. They built routines that felt almost sacred. Friday night takeout, Sunday breakfasts, spontaneous weekend drives with no destination in mind. It wasn't dramatic love. It was steady, and that made it stronger. There was one thing, though one detail Emily noticed early on but never questioned deeply. Michael never drank. At office gatherings, he would politely refuse. At dinners, he'd smile and wave off offers of wine or beer. "I've just never liked it," he would say simply. Sometimes he added, "I've trained my body for years, I don't want to mess with that." It sounded reasonable, disciplined, even admirable. Emily respected it. Still, there was something about the way he said it, calm but final, like a door gently closed. At the time, she didn't push, because everything else about him felt open, honest, safe. But what Emily didn't realize yet was that some silences aren't empty. They're hiding entire worlds. And sooner or later, those worlds find a way to surface. But the first real crack in Michael's carefully built calm wouldn't come from him. It would come from a simple question at dinner. The invitation had seemed harmless at first. Emily's parents had been asking to meet Michael for months, ever since it became clear he wasn't just a passing phase in her life. To them, this wasn't casual anymore, it was serious. And serious meant introductions, conversations, and quiet evaluations that only parents knew how to conduct. So one Saturday evening, Emily brought Michael to her childhood home on the east side of Cleveland. The house looked exactly as she remembered, warm lights glowing through the windows, the faint scent of something homemade drifting into the cold air. Inside, everything felt familiar. Framed family photos, polished wooden furniture, and the comforting hum of a place where nothing ever truly changed. Her mother, Patricia, greeted them with a bright smile and flower-dusted hands, pulling Michael into a warm welcome before he could even fully step inside. Her father, George, stood a bit more reserved but extended a firm handshake, his quiet nod signaling approval, at least for now. Dinner was thoughtful and abundant. Roast chicken, buttery mashed potatoes, fresh vegetables, and Patricia's famous apple pie waiting patiently for dessert. It wasn't just a meal, it was an offering. A way of saying, "You matter if you're here." Michael handled it all effortlessly. He answered questions with calm confidence, never too long, never too short. He spoke about his job, his routines, his preference for quiet evenings over loud gatherings. He even made George chuckle once or twice, no small accomplishment. Emily watched it all unfold with quiet relief. This was working. This was good. Her mother noticed the way Michael looked at Emily, steady, attentive, protective without being overbearing. It was the kind of look that didn't need explanation. And yet, something lingered. It wasn't obvious, not enough to name, but enough to feel. Halfway through dessert, Patricia set her fork down gently and smiled across the table. "So, Michael," she said casually, "tell us a little about your family. Emily hasn't said much, and we'd love to know more." It was a simple question, an ordinary question, the kind people ask without thinking twice. But the effect it had was immediate. Michael paused, just for a fraction of a second, so brief it could have been missed, but not by Emily. She saw it. The slight tightening of his jaw, the almost imperceptible shift in his posture. Then just as quickly it was gone, replaced by that same calm expression. "Oh, they're around," he said lightly. "Different part of Ohio. We're not very close." He picked up his glass water, as always, and took a small sip. Nothing too interesting, honestly. And just like that, he redirected the conversation. He asked George about his work, commented on the food, smiled, engaged. Anyone else might have let it go, but something about it didn't sit right. Patricia exchanged a quick glance with George, subtle, almost invisible, but filled with silent understanding. Emily caught it too. It wasn't suspicion. Not yet, but it was awareness. A small mental note filed away. Because it wasn't just what Michael said. It was what he didn't say, the absence, the deflection, the way a door had been quietly shut before anyone could even see what was behind it. The evening ended on a warm note. Laughter returned. Goodbyes were exchanged. Patricia hugged Michael like he already belonged, and George gave him another firm handshake, this time with a hint more approval. On the drive home, the city lights blurred past the windows. Emily stared ahead, her thoughts unusually loud. Michael drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting casually near hers. Everything about him seemed normal again, steady, unbothered. But the silence between them felt different. Not uncomfortable, just heavier. She wanted to ask, she almost did, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the way he had answered, or the way he had avoided answering. So instead, she stayed quiet and let the question sit between them. Unspoken, unresolved. Because for the first time since falling in love with him, Emily realized there was a part of Michael she didn't know at all. And something told her that part wasn't small. What Emily didn't know yet was that this quiet mystery wouldn't stay hidden for long, because the next time it surfaced, it would threaten to change their future forever. In the weeks after that dinner, life seemed to return to normal, at least on the surface. Emily went back to work, to routines, to quiet evenings with Michael that still felt warm and familiar. If anything, their bond seemed stronger. Conversations about the future came more naturally now, slipping into their daily lives without effort. And eventually, like it always does, one word began to appear more often than the others. Marriage. It wasn't a dramatic proposal at first. No grand gestures or carefully staged moments. Just quiet conversations that slowly built into something real. One evening, while sharing takeout on their couch, Michael reached for her hand and said it plainly. "I don't want to imagine my life without you anymore." That was enough. Within days, the idea of a wedding started taking shape, not just between them, but within Emily's family as well. Patricia was ecstatic, already envisioning flowers, music, and a room filled with people celebrating her daughter's future. George tried to act indifferent, but even he couldn't hide his quiet pride. To them, this wasn't just a ceremony. It was a milestone, a moment they had been waiting for their entire lives. But Michael saw it differently. One evening, as they sat at their small kitchen table, the hum of the radiator filling the silence, he brought it up carefully. "What if we kept it simple?" he said. Emily looked up. "Simple how?" "Really simple," he clarified. "A courthouse ceremony, maybe dinner after, just us and a few close people." She blinked, surprised. "That's it," he shrugged slightly, trying to keep his tone casual. "Why spend money on a big event? Half the people you invite barely matter. We could use that money for something real, a house, a trippy, a future." On paper, it made perfect sense. Practical, even thoughtful, but something about it didn't feel complete. "I don't want anything huge," Emily said slowly. "But nothing at all, no celebration." Michael didn't answer right away. And that hesitation, again, felt familiar. When Emily mentioned the idea to her parents, the reaction was immediate. "No reception?" Patricia repeated, almost dropping the dish she was holding. "Absolutely not. Your wedding isn't just paperwork," George added, more firmly than usual. "It's a commitment. It deserves to be honored properly." "They even offered to pay for everything," Emily later told Michael, her voice careful. "It really matters to them." Michael's reaction was subtle, but unmistakable. His hands paused mid-motion as he folded a shirt, then he placed it down. "Emily," he exhaled, quieter now, "my family won't be there." The words landed heavier than expected. She frowned. "What do you mean?" "They just won't," he said, avoiding her eyes. "But have you told them, invited them?" "I don't need to." "That's not an answer, Michael." He turned away, his jaw tightening. "It's not possible," he said flatly. "Let's just leave it at that." And there it was again. That wall, not anger, not even defensiveness, just a firm, immovable boundary. Emily felt frustration rise, but beneath it, something else was growing. Confusion. Because this wasn't about scheduling conflicts, or distance, or even family disagreements. This was something deeper, something he refused to even name. Later that night, lying beside him in the dark, Emily stared at the ceiling while his breathing settled into sleep. Her thoughts, however, refused to rest. Weddings were about bringing lives together. Two people, two families, two histories. But how could she step into a future with someone whose past remained completely closed off? She tried to reason with herself. He'll tell me when he's ready. Everyone has things they don't talk about. It doesn't mean anything is wrong. But the thoughts didn't stick. Because it wasn't just silence anymore. It was avoidance. And avoidance always had a reason. A few days later, Michael mentioned he'd be traveling for work, just a short trip, nothing unusual. He even invited her to come along. Emily declined. Too much to do, she said. Deadlines. Responsibilities. He accepted it without question. But as she watched him leave early the next morning, something shifted inside her. Because for the first time, Emily wasn't just wondering anymore. She was deciding. If Michael wouldn't open that door, she might have to find it herself. And what Emily was about to discover was far more than just a hidden past. It was a truth that would change everything she thought she knew about the man she loved. The moment Michael's taxi disappeared down the street, the silence in the apartment felt different. Not peaceful, not comforting. Heavy. Emily stood by the window longer than necessary, arms folded tightly, her mind already racing ahead of her. She told herself she wasn't doing anything wrong, just looking for answers. Just trying to understand the man she was about to marry. But deep down, she knew this wasn't harmless curiosity anymore. This was a line, and she was about to cross it. That evening, she moved through the apartment with unusual purpose. Cleaning, organizing, searching without calling it that. Every drawer, every surface, nothing obvious, nothing revealing. Until she reached Michael's car. She hesitated before opening the glove compartment. For a second, she almost stopped. Then she pulled it open. Inside were the usual things, insurance papers, receipts, a pen that barely worked. And then an envelope, folded, worn, almost forgotten. Her name wasn't on it, but another was, Carol Harris, her breath caught. The address printed beneath it wasn't in Cleveland. It was somewhere else. Somewhere Michael had never mentioned. Emily stared at the paper, her heart pounding louder with every passing second. This was it. The piece he never gave her. The answer he never spoke. She held it for a long moment, guilt creeping in like a shadow she couldn't shake. This wasn't how trust was supposed to work. This wasn't how love was supposed to feel. But neither was silence. Slowly, she slipped the envelope into her bag. The next morning, she told her parents she had errands to run outside the city. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. Then she got into her car and typed the address into the GPS. The drive began quietly. Familiar roads, familiar signs, the steady rhythm of the highway stretching out in front of her. For a while, it felt almost normal, like any other trip. But the further she drove, the more things began to change. The polished edges of the city gave way to something older, something worn. The buildings grew quieter, the roads less maintained. The colors duller, like life itself had slowly drained from the landscape. Factories appeared, abandoned, rusted, skeletal. Their broken windows stared back like hollow eyes. Smoke no longer rose from their stacks, but their presence still felt heavy. The air itself seemed different. Still, tired. As she approached Youngstown, the shift became impossible to ignore. Rows of houses lined the streets, but many looked forgotten. Paint peeling, porches sagging, windows boarded or cracked. Some homes leaned slightly, as if time had pushed them too far and they simply gave up resisting. Emily tightened her grip on the steering wheel. This wasn't where she expected Michael to come from. This wasn't the life she had imagined behind his quiet composure. Her GPS guided her off the main road and into a narrower street. For a long moment, Emily didn't move. The engine was off. The street was silent. Even the wind seemed to hesitate, as if the world itself was holding its breath with her. Then, slowly, she opened the car door. The cold air hit her instantly, sharp, biting, real. Her boots crunched against loose gravel as she stepped forward, each sound louder than it should have been in the stillness. The house loomed ahead, sagging under its own weight. The paint had long since peeled away, leaving behind a dull, tired surface. The porch tilted slightly, as though it had given up trying to stand straight. And then there was the smell, faint at first, then unmistakable. Stale alcohol, rotting wood, something sour lingering beneath it all. Emily swallowed hard but forced herself forward, step by step, until she reached the door. She hesitated, her hand hovering just inches from it. "You can still leave," a voice in her mind whispered. But another voice, stronger now, answered back. Not anymore. She knocked. Once. No response. She knocked again, louder this time. From inside, she heard it, a television droning faintly, followed by a shuffling sound. Then a voice, rough and irritated. "Who is it? I told you I don't have any money." The door creaked open, and everything changed. The woman standing there looked far older than she should have. Her hair was tangled, her skin uneven and flushed, her eyes dull yet sharp with suspicion. A stained robe hung loosely from her frame, and in her hand a bottle. Half empty. Or half full, it was hard to tell. "What do you want?" she snapped. Emily's throat tightened. I'm looking for Carol Harris." The woman gave a short, bitter laugh. "Well, you found her, now what?" Up close, the smell was stronger. Alcohol soaked into everything, her breath, her clothes, the air itself. Emily felt her heart racing. I needed to talk to you. About... Unless you're here to pay something, I'm not interested." Carol cut her off sharply. "Electric, water, take it all, doesn't matter." Before Emily could respond, another voice came from inside. Younger, sharper. "Mom, stop it. She's not from any company." A girl stepped into view. Thin, maybe 12. Her hair pulled back messily, her clothes worn but clean enough to show effort. But it was her eyes that stood out bright green. Alert, too aware for someone her age. "Go back inside, Lily," Carol snapped, turning angrily. But the girl didn't move. Instead, she crossed her arms. "You're just going to try to take her money like always," she said, her voice steady despite the tension. Carol's expression twisted instantly. "Watch your mouth. You sold my jacket," Lily fired back. "The one Michael bought, and the boots, and anything else you could trade for a drink." The name hit Emily like a shockwave. Michael. Hearing it here spoken with frustration, with pain, made everything feel suddenly real. Carol staggered forward slightly, pointing a finger. "You don't know anything about what I've done for this family." Lily didn't flinch. "I know enough. That's why he doesn't come back." Silence fell, heavy, uncomfortable, unavoidable. Emily stood frozen, caught in something she never expected to witness. Carol's face shifted, anger mixing with something else. Shame, or maybe resentment. "Get inside," she muttered again, but Lily shook her head. "Daniel's gone," she said, quieter now, but more powerful than before. "And Michael hates this place because of you." The words hung in the air like something fragile and dangerous. Emily felt her chest tighten. "Daniel." Carol turned back toward Emily abruptly, as if suddenly remembering she was there. "You don't belong here," she said coldly. "Whatever you think you're doing, leave." The door slammed shut before Emily could say another word. The sound echoed through the hollow structure of the house. And just like that, she was outside again. Alone, but not the same, because now she knew. This wasn't just a distant family Michael avoided. This was something broken, something painful, something he had escaped. Emily stood there staring at the closed door, her breath visible in the cold air. Then, suddenly, movement from the side of the house. Lily. She burst out, running, fast, like she had done it 100 times before. Emily's instincts kicked in instantly. "Lily, wait!" she called out. But the girl didn't stop, didn't even look back. She just kept running down the street, disappearing between houses that looked just as tired as the one she left behind. Emily hesitated for only a second. Then she followed. Because whatever answers she had come here for, they weren't behind that door anymore. They were running ahead of her. And this time, she wasn't going to stop. But when Emily finally catches up to Lily, the truth she hears won't just explain Michael's past. It will break her heart in ways she never expected. "Lily, wait!" Emily's voice echoed down the empty street, but the girl didn't slow down. She moved fast, cutting between houses, her steps practiced, like she knew exactly where she was going and had no intention of being followed. But Emily kept going. Her breath grew heavier, her pace uneven against the broken pavement. She wasn't used to running like this, not through streets that felt forgotten, not chasing a child who clearly didn't want to be caught. Still, something inside her refused to stop. Because this wasn't just about curiosity anymore. It was about understanding. After several blocks, Lily finally slowed. The narrow street opened into a small clearing, where an old convenience store stood at the corner, its windows dusty, its sign faded almost beyond recognition. Beyond it, a dirt path curved toward a quiet stretch of water. A lake, still, gray, almost eerily calm. Emily spotted Lily heading down that path. This time, she didn't call out. Instead, she ducked into the store briefly. The bell above the door gave a weak jingle as she stepped inside. The shelves were half-stocked, the air stale, the cashier uninterested. She grabbed a few things, cookies, a small pack of jerky, a couple of lollipops. Simple. Enough. When she stepped back outside, Lily was waiting at the edge of the path, arms crossed. Eyes sharp. "Why are you following me?" she demanded. Emily held up the small bag. "I just thought you might be hungry." Lily narrowed her eyes, clearly skeptical, but after a moment she turned away. "Fine," she muttered, "but I'm not going back there." Emily nodded quietly and followed her down the path. The lake came into full view, surrounded by bare trees, the water reflecting the dull sky above. It was quiet here, too quiet, the kind of silence that made every word feel heavier. Lily sat on a fallen log, pulling her knees close to her chest. Emily sat a few feet away, placing the snacks between them. "Take whatever you want," she said softly. For a moment, Lily didn't move. Then she reached out, grabbing a cookie. She ate slowly, cautiously, like she wasn't used to someone offering her something without expecting anything in return. They sat in silence for a while. The water moved gently. A cold breeze passed through the trees. Then finally, Lily spoke. "You're not from here." It wasn't a question. "No," Emily admitted. "Then why did you come?" Emily hesitated. This was the moment. "I know your brother," she said gently. "Michael." Lily's head snapped toward her instantly. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "You're lying." "I'm not," Emily said quickly. "We're getting married." The words hung in the air. Lily stared at her, searching her face for something, anything that might prove she was telling the truth. Slowly, her posture shifted, not relaxed, but less defensive. "He didn't tell you about us, did he?" she asked quietly. Emily shook her head. "No," Lily let out a short, humorless laugh. "Of course he didn't." She looked back at the lake. "This place isn't something you show people." Emily didn't interrupt. She knew better now, so she waited, and Lily began. "Michael used to come back a lot," she said. "Before everything." Her fingers tightened around the wrapper of the lollipop. "He tried to help, brought food, clothes, whatever he could, but it didn't matter. Mom would just sell it." Emily felt her chest tighten. "He stopped bringing stuff after a while," Lily continued. "Not because he didn't care, because it didn't change anything." A pause. "Then there were 4 of us." Emily's breath caught slightly. "Sarah, the oldest, she left early, got married, had kids, she's not much better off." Another pause. "Then Michael." Her voice softened just slightly. "Then Daniel." The name lingered. "Heavy, and then me." Emily stayed completely still. Something about the way Lily said that name, Daniel, felt like stepping onto thin ice. He was the one who stayed, Lily said quietly. When Michael left for college, Daniel stayed with me, took care of things, protected me. Her voice wavered, but didn't break. He thought he could fix everything. The wind picked up slightly, rippling across the surface of the lake. Lily's gaze stayed locked on the water. One night, Mom brought someone home. Emily felt her stomach tighten. A guy, drunk, angry, like most of them. Her fingers clenched now. They started fighting, loud. Worse than usual. Emily's heart was pounding again. Then he pulled a knife. Silence, thick, unbearable. Daniel stepped in. Emily's breath caught. He tried to stop him. A long pause, the kind that says everything without saying it. Then he didn't make it. The words landed quietly, but they hit harder than anything else. Emily felt her chest ache instantly, her throat tightening as the weight of it settled in. Lily didn't cry. She just stared at the water. He died right there, she said, and Michael wasn't there. Another pause. He was supposed to come home that weekend, but there was a storm, he couldn't make it. Emily closed her eyes briefly, and suddenly everything made sense. The silence, the distance, the refusal to talk. He thinks it's his fault, Lily added softly. That if he had been there, Daniel would still be alive. The wind moved again, colder this time. Emily looked at the girl beside her, this child who had seen more than most adults ever should. And in that moment, she finally understood Michael. Not just the man she loved, but the pain he carried, the reason behind every silence, every deflection, every carefully built wall. This wasn't about hiding. It was about surviving. And as Emily sat there, staring out at the still water, she realized something else. This truth was only the beginning. But when Emily returns home and finally tells Michael what she's done, the reaction she gets isn't what she expected. And it might change everything between them. The drive back felt longer than the one that brought her there. Emily barely noticed the road. The cracked streets faded into highways, the highways into familiar city lines, but her mind stayed behind. By that lake, on that fallen log, with a girl who had said too much in a voice far too calm for what she had lived through. By the time she reached her parents' home in Cleveland, the sky had already begun to dim. The house looked the same as always, warm, safe, unchanged. But Emily wasn't. She stepped inside, greeted by the comforting smell of dinner and the soft clatter of dishes. Patricia turned immediately, her expression shifting the moment she saw her daughter's face. "Emily, what happened?" Emily forced a small smile. "Nothing you can fix, Mom." But her voice gave her away. At dinner, she barely ate. Her father noticed. Her mother worried. The quiet tension at the table grew heavier with every passing minute until Emily finally set her fork down. "I don't want the big wedding," she said suddenly. Both parents looked up. "What?" Patricia asked, startled. "I mean it," Emily continued, her voice steadier now. "No big venue, no long guest list. I want something small." "Simple," George leaned back slightly. "This is about what Michael wants." "No," Emily said. "It's about what matters." There was a pause. Then she added, more softly, "There's someone else who needs to be there." Patricia frowned. "Who, Lily?" The name meant nothing to them. Yet, "She's Michael's sister," Emily explained. "And she's alone." The room fell quiet. Emily took a breath and continued, not everything but enough. About the house, about what she saw, about the life Michael had never spoken about. Her parents listened, their expressions slowly shifting from confusion to understanding, and then to something deeper. Concern. "That girl is still living there?" Patricia asked quietly. Emily nodded. "And Michael just left her?" "No," Emily said firmly. "He didn't leave her. He's been helping her, sending money, trying in the only way he knows how." George crossed his arms, thoughtful. "And now you want to bring her into your life?" Emily met his gaze. "Yes." There was no hesitation, no uncertainty. "I can't marry him," she added, "and pretend she doesn't exist." The honesty in her voice left no room for argument. Patricia reached across the table, placing her hand over Emily's. "If this is what you believe is right, we'll support you." George sighed quietly, but there was no resistance left in him. "Then we do it your way." Relief washed over Emily, but it was brief, because the hardest part still hadn't come. 2 days later, Michael returned. The moment he stepped into their apartment, everything felt the same again. The familiar rhythm, the quiet presence, the sense of home. But Emily knew it wouldn't stay that way. Not after what she had done. They sat at the kitchen table that evening. The same place where they had talked about their future. Now, it felt like a place where everything might break. "Michael," she began carefully, her hands folded tightly. "I need to tell you something." He looked up, sensing the shift immediately. "What is it?" Emily inhaled slowly. "I went to Youngstown." Silence. Instant. Total. Michael's face changed. Not gradually, all at once. "What?" he said, his voice low but sharp. "I went to see your family." His chair scraped loudly against the floor as he stood. "Why would you do that?" There was no anger in his tone, not yet. Just something worse. Panic. "I needed to understand," Emily said, her voice steady despite the tension rising between them. "You weren't supposed to go there," he snapped. "I met Lily." That stopped him, completely. The name hit him like something physical. "You what?" "She's still there, Michael," Emily said softly. "She's alone, she needs you." His breathing grew uneven. "You don't understand that place," he said, running a hand through his hair. "You don't understand what I've been trying to keep you away from." "I do," Emily replied. "And then I know about Daniel." The room went still. Michael didn't move, didn't speak. For a long moment, he just stood there. Then slowly, like something inside him had finally given way, he sank back into his chair, his face in his hands, his shoulders trembling. "I should have been there," he whispered. Emily's heart broke at the sound of it. "If I had just come home, if I hadn't stayed, he'd still be alive." "That's not true," she said gently. "You don't know that." His voice cracked now, raw, unfiltered. "I left them there. I left him there." "You were trying to build a life," Emily said. "You were surviving." "I was running," he corrected bitterly. Silence fell again, but this time it wasn't distance, it was exposure. Emily reached across the table, placing her hand over his. He didn't pull away. "She doesn't blame you," she said softly. "She misses you." Michael closed his eyes, pain flickering across his face. "I couldn't go back," he admitted. "Every time I thought about it, I saw that night." Emily squeezed his hand gently. "You don't have to go back to who you were," she said, "but you can decide who you want to be now." He looked at her then, really looked. "And what if I can't fix it?" "You're not supposed to fix everything," she said. "Just don't abandon what's left." The words stayed with him, hung between them. Then finally, quietly, "What are you asking me to do?" Emily took a breath. "When we get married, I want Lily there." A long pause. Emotion passed across his face, fear, hesitation, pain, and then something else, something softer. "She'd like that," he admitted. Emily smiled faintly. "And I want more than that," she continued. "I want us to help her, really help her." Michael swallowed hard. The walls he had built for years were still there, but now they had cracks. And through those cracks, light was finally getting in. But what happens next won't just change Michael's future. The morning of the wedding arrived quietly. No grand music, no crowded halls, no overwhelming expectations. Just sunlight filtering through tall courthouse windows and a calm that felt earned, not given. Emily stood beside Michael inside the local courthouse in Youngstown, her hands gently clasped in his. Her dress was simple, cream-colored, elegant in the way that didn't need attention to be meaningful. Michael wore a dark suit, neat but unpretentious, his usual composure softened by something new. Nervousness. But not the kind that comes from doubt. The kind that comes from finally facing something real. A small group stood behind them. Patricia and George, proud and emotional in their own quiet ways. A couple of Michael's colleagues. And then Lily, standing slightly apart at first, unsure of where she belonged. The dress she wore was new, chosen carefully by Emily just days before. It wasn't expensive, but it was hers, completely hers. And the way she held herself, still cautious but trying, said everything. When the ceremony began, it was brief. Simple vows, soft voices, a few signatures. And just like that, it was done. No applause, no spectacle, just something deeper. Real. When the judge declared them married, Emily felt Michael's hand tighten around hers, not out of fear, but out of certainty. For the first time, he wasn't holding on to survive. He was holding on because he wanted to. Afterward, the room shifted into quiet celebration. Patricia hugged Emily tightly, her eyes glistening. George shook Michael's hand, but this time it lingered a little longer. Then came Lily. She hesitated for a second, then stepped forward. "You look really nice," she said awkwardly to Emily. Emily smiled warmly. "So do you." But before anything else could be said, Lily turned to Michael and wrapped her arms around him. It wasn't polished. It wasn't practiced. It was tight. Real and needed. Michael froze for just a second, then held her back. Fully, without hesitation. For years, he had kept distance to protect himself. Now he let it go. They didn't go to a ballroom or a luxury venue. Instead, they walked down the street to a small diner nearby. Vinyl booths. The smell of coffee and grilled food in the air. Nothing impressive, but everything meaningful. They filled a corner table, laughter slowly replacing the weight that had once defined their story. Plates of pancakes, burgers, and pie covered the table, not elegant, but comforting. At one point, the waitress, realizing what the gathering was, brought out a slice of pie with congratulations written in syrup. Everyone laughed, even Lily. And for a moment, she looked like a normal 12-year-old. Not someone shaped by survival, but someone allowed to simply be. Later, as the table cleared and the conversation softened, Michael stood. "I know this isn't what people usually expect," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "But for me, this is everything." He glanced at Emily, then at Lily. "I spent a long time thinking I didn't deserve a life like this. But I was wrong." His voice faltered slightly. "And having you here," he said to Lily, "means more than I can explain." Lily looked down briefly, then back up. "I thought you forgot about me," she admitted quietly. Michael shook his head instantly. "Never." That moment wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Because within weeks, Michael made a decision he had once avoided entirely. He filed for guardianship. The process wasn't easy. Home visits, paperwork, interviews, evaluations. Every part of his life was examined. His past, his finances, his stability. At times, it felt like being judged for everything he had tried to escape. But he didn't stop. Because this time he wasn't running, he was building. Emily stood beside him through all of it, supporting, encouraging, never letting him retreat back into silence. And Lily, slowly, cautiously, started to change. Her guarded expressions softened. Her sharp edges didn't disappear, but they became less defensive, more human. She laughed more, spoke more, trusted just a little more each day, until finally the court approved it. Michael became her legal guardian. And just like that, she wasn't alone anymore. Months later, on a quiet gray morning, they returned to a place Michael had avoided for years. A cemetery just outside Youngstown. The air was cold. Still, Michael stood in front of a modest headstone, Daniel Harris. For a long time, he said nothing. Then finally, "I'm sorry," he whispered. His voice broke. "I should have been there." Emily placed a hand gently on his back. Lily stood beside him, silent but present. "You didn't fail him," Emily said softly. "You've been carrying something that was never yours to carry." The wind moved lightly through the trees, and for the first time Michael believed it. Not completely, but enough to breathe, enough to let go. "I forgive myself," he said quietly. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real, and that was enough. As they walked away together, Emily on one side, Lily on the other, the past didn't disappear. But it no longer controlled him. Because family, he realized, wasn't defined by where you came from. It was defined by who stayed, who chose you, who stood beside you, even when things were broken. And as the first light snow began to fall around them, soft and quiet, Michael understood something he never thought possible. He hadn't lost his family. He had rebuilt it. Stronger, healthier, real. And this time, he wasn't going to let it slip away. Because sometimes, the life you're meant to live doesn't begin when everything is perfect. It begins the moment you choose to face what you've been running from.